Sojourner Truth was both a feminist and an abolitionist, which means she fought for both women's rights and blacks' freedom. She was driven by her religion and often spoke to that. She was born into slavery in the state of New York and given the name Isabella. She had 5 children with a fellow slave, and 3 of those children were sold into slavery. 1 year before mandatory emancipation in New York, she escaped slavery. She fled to a Quaker family's home in 1827 and took their name in place of her own. After being free, she moved to New York City, and that's when she began her Reformation. She embraced religion and started standing at street corners preaching to others. Although she was never schooled, she learned everything she needed to know from the Bible. In the 1940s, she started her work with the Garrisonian abolitionists in Massachusetts. Then in 1843, she became known as Sojourner Truth and traveled telling the stories and songs of the gospel. Michigan became her home in the mid-50s, which is where she stayed for the rest of her life. Blacks weren't allowed to join the military, so she spent her time, along with others, fighting for their right to join in the war effort. She helped out during the Civil War, collecting food and clothing for black soldiers, and even traveled to the White House to speak with Abraham Lincoln about the relief work for the freed people. Sojourner Truth is most known for her work for black freedom and rights. This was something that she was obviously passionate about, and she didn't let the fact that she was a woman stop her either. She spent most of her life talking to people and spreading the word of black people's rights. She also provided a safe haven and shelter to those recently freed from slavery and helped advise them as what to do next. One of her most memorable quotes happened when she was thrown off a segregated streetcar in Washington, D.C. "It is hard for the old slave-holding spirit to die, but die it must," she said. Sojourner Truth was known as the first African-American woman to win a lawsuit against the United States. She believed her son was illegally sold and fought for his freedom. Even though she won the lawsuit, she was immediately accused of being a witch. A newspaper said she poisoned one of the religious leaders in a group she was a part of. Because this was slander, she sued the newspaper and won $125. She's had a huge impact on history and has many monuments named in her honor. People travel from all over the world to visit the statues of her and remember what a warrior she was for the Black rights movement as well as the women's rights movement. One thing she will be remembered for is her great speeches. "Ain't I a Woman" was delivered in 1851 at the Women's Rights Convention in Akron, Ohio.
First, from C-SPAN's American Writers Series, an excerpt of an interview with Nell Irvin Painter, author of 2 books on Sojourner Truth.
Dr. Painter, this question has been asked of you so many times, I know, but for those who are not familiar, who was Sojourner Truth?
Sojourner Truth was an abolitionist. She was a feminist. She was a black woman who represented black women in antebellum reform.
Today in the 20th century, she's popular in certain circles in the country. Among what kinds of people do they look to her and study her history, and how long has she been popular?
She's been popular since she became a public figure in the 1820s and 1830s, but with different people. So when she was an itinerant preacher, she was popular among the people who wanted to hear about God and Jesus and being saved. And then she became popular as a Millerite, people who thought the world was going to end. She became popular among anti-slavery people and feminists. And then after her death, she became popular among women feminists who were looking for a usable women's history and among people who were looking for a usable African American history.
What do you think the source of all this popularity is with Sojourner Truth? What do they see in her?
Oh dear, I'm so tempted to say the source is ignorance, because we pile on to Sojourner Truth everything we need from black women in public life. But the beauty of Sojourner Truth is that she does work as a symbol, and we have images of her.
And why does that matter?
It matters tremendously, as you know, in an image-conscious culture. What would we do on television without images of Sojourner Truth? But how many other black women from the 19th century have we images of? Very little.